Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Shafiu Suleiman. Today, we'll be discussing the insecurity problems across Nigeria. Activities of armed groups and insurgents have been undermining the desire to have a peaceful Nigeria. As the country struggles with complex and armed uprisings, the Boko Haram insurgency, banditry in parts of the north, communal complex in north central, and secessionist agitations threatens the corporate existence of Nigeria as a nation. Hostilities against northern traders living in the southern parts of the country has also continued to remain a serious concern to stakeholders in the Nigerian project. The recent attacks and killings of 8 cattle traders in Abia State and the clash between the youths of Tib and Jukun in Benue have opened another round of debates along the line of one Nigeria, which has continued to remain an illusion despite efforts to forge a greater unity amongst ethnic groups. The disturbing scenario appeared to have opened yet to be healed, similar wound in the hearts of many victims and survivors of killings of northerners carrying out legitimate businesses in the southern part of the country. So tonight we are asking, are these killings politically motivated? Who is benefiting from what? How can these unprovoked killings be tamed? I have with me in the studio Comrade Ilyasu Gadu, a columnist and public affairs analyst. Thank you for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
Also joining us is Abdulaziz Suleiman, who is a spokesman of the Coalition of Northern Groups. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Shafiu.
Also, to be part of the discussion this evening is Comrade Salih Mahmoud, another public affairs commentator who will be joining us. Thank you for coming.
Good evening, Nigerians.
So together, we'll be looking at the issues very closely. Welcome to Daily Politics. Let's take a break, after which the conversation begins. Stay tuned. Thank you very much for staying with us. It's Daily Politics and it's reaching you live from Trust TV here in Abuja. Just like I introduced earlier on, we're looking at the return of communal conflict in Nigeria and devastating impacts on our socio-economic development and, of course, the corporate existence of Nigeria as a nation. Let me begin with Suleiman Abdulaziz, as the spokesman of the CNG, that is a coalition of northern groups. Looking at the various conflicts plaguing the northern part of the country in particular, because if you're talking about insecurity, yes, looking at the nation generally, every region has its own fair share of the insecurity, but most of this devastating impact of conflicts and insecurity is domiciled in the north. If you are to crime map the entire region, you begin to realize that no part of the region is peaceful, so to speak. You go to the northeast, it's about Boko Haram insurgency, ISWAP and what have you. You come to the north central, it's about farmers-herders conflict, it's about communal crisis. In Jukun, Taraba, Benue, in Plateau, Access, in Kaduna, and so on and so forth. And then if you come, to the northwest, you'll be battling, this issue of now terrorists, having field day, sacking communities, and of course, making life unbearable. Let me get your perspective. Why is all of this happening, especially in this part of the country? What are the factors, the precipitating factors?
What we believe in is that, first and foremost, it's quite unfortunate that the entire northern Nigeria today is virtually a battlefront with conflicts in every section of the region. You see, the conflicts are peculiar they are not similar. If you look at what is happening in the south, in the northeast, it's about an insurgency by the Boko Haram Islamist group, now taken over by ISWAP. They have a different agenda. They have their motive, which may not be acceptable to the entire community, to the society. And if you come down west, that's northwest, you find that there are also peculiarities there. If you look at Zamfara, the case of Zamfara is quite different from the case of perhaps Kaduna and Plateau. In Plateau, it's...
What makes them different?
Yeah, in Plateau, it's mostly about, Plateau and Benue, mostly about tribal issues, communal issues, but in the northwest, is a convergence of criminality and vengeance, particularly in Zamfara state. We've had a series of discussions, we've conducted researches, and even very recently someone wrote an entire book called I'm a Bandit. I think he exposed a lot of things which the authorities and even the communities are not really ready to confront. Like I said, in most parts of Zamfara state, it's about vengeance. It's about the manipulation of a conflict, farmer-herder conflict that had been going on intermittently for decades, and which was easily managed, which were easily managed by
manipulation by who now?
That's what I'm coming to. These conflicts were easily managed at community level in those days, but along the line, I think beginning from 1999. With the return to civil
rule,
politics, issues began to get out of hand. I remember a time when the commissioner of police at that time invited us. We went for a discussion, and he said he was going to tell us the whole truth. He confessed first and foremost that, one, he is from, I think, Borno State, Buala, from Buala, and he is a Christian. He said, now you can see for Abubakar, that time it was Abubakar, IG, to have posted me to his own state, it means he is confident in my ability.
Right.
So he told us the truth that, you see, the genesis of this, there used to be these conflicts over land, over space, which were handled at community level. Then at a point, the cattle rearers, the cattle herders, were duped out of their herds by some people in power, in collaboration with security forces.
Okay, we'll further discuss, the details. We'll look at the issues one after the other. Right.
Like I said, it's about vengeance in Zamfara state. It's about tribal differences and ethnic in most of the central states, central states,
right.
and insurgency in the northeast.
Looking at the region, he describe it, effectively as a battlefront, looking at all of this conflict that have been happening. Now, over the years, the northern part of the country, in spite of its, huge, human and material resources, natural resources, and the fact that, it has all it takes to develop, in a very, very consistent manner, has been plagued, by this conflict. How would you quantify, perhaps, the impact of some of this conflict on, first, the economy, and then, secondly, the socio-economic well-being of the region, and by extension, Nigeria, because we cannot talk about North without talking about Nigeria?
Well, let me just correct the impression that was earlier given. You said whether it's a return of communal conflicts. Communal conflicts have always been with us. Wow. As my colleague here has rightly explained, you have them in different categories, in different dimensions, in different areas. but they are principally conflicts that are community-based. And this really has to do with the what people believe is the failure at the local government levels, because most of these conflicts start from the local government levels. And we knew that in the north, I mean, as it is currently constituted, is about 70% of the total landmass of Nigeria, is the food basket of Nigeria. It's also a lot of potentials. I mean, you would not be flattering it if you said the North really holds the stability of this country together, because it's a role it has played in the past and it's continuing to play. And the North is like the common denominator. It is a place where it provides opportunities for itself and for other parts of Nigeria to regenerate and to be able to lead in terms of actions towards safeguarding the Nigerian nation and the Nigerian project. So now that you are having this insurgency, all kinds of communal conflicts, all kinds of we have to go back and look at the basics. In the past, we had the North was pretty stable. I mean, that's not to say that the North has never been in crisis, but it was pretty stable because there was a system where from the grassroots right up to the rulership at the top, there was that connection in terms of connectivity of power, of whatever. So, but now with it's first of all, the coming of the military sort of truncated that. It sort of provided, in the past, you used to have from the communities right up to the power. You knew there was one, but it was bottoms up. Now the military came in with their command system and all that, and then first of all truncated the civilian leadership and truncated, and then they now became the wedge between the grassroots and the civilian leadership, which they now assumed. So in that situation, the people at the grassroots, at the local level, couldn't look up to the military, because the military were jackboots. They were not people who they could sit down and talk with. You can't, for instance, an emir or a local dagachi go to the house of a military ruler or military commander in your area to discuss this. You are afraid that you too might be a victim. Right. So at the end of the day, these linkages created a gap, and it continued to morph into something that has become unmanageable now.
Right. Unmanageable, more of a systemic problem. Talking about the absence of governance at the grassroots level, the disconnection between the traditional institutions and, of course, the governments at the center, and so on and so forth. Before now, these two critical institutions are very crucial, today. Security and, of course, prosperity and even stability of the regions and Nigeria by extension. How do you, because of your security background, for instance, how do you see the absence of these key institutions, undermining the ability to address at the root causes of this complex that we're talking about?
Well, in the type of societies we grew up, we had what you call immense respect for the traditional institution. From the Dasuki local government reforms that took away the powers of the traditional institution, I think we started getting it wrong. Today, we have states. Then it was premiership, divided into different regions. And they were able to administer us irrespective of religious or tribal belonging. But today, because of the absence of the constitutional roles of the traditional institution, you now find where politicians, whether at the local level, state level, or federal, manipulate to sow seed of discord among us, doing what you call divide and rule tactics by letting some unenlightened people, kick against each other, either as a result of religious or tribal differences. And this is where we are, and this is what we are getting as a result of deviation from giving recognition constitutionally to roles of our fathers who we call traditional rulers. I can tell you vividly, in my own community, which is the Kayama community, in Kayama local government area of Kwara State, till date, our emir, who is a first-class emir, still have a kind of 100% control and hold of traditional chiefdoms. These are the second class as well as third class traditional rulers who come at invitation. They sometimes discuss traditional security, they discuss welfare of the community, development and other things, which I believe in some other parts of the country that still have, where you can find a member of House of Rep or senator or even local government chairman not having such respect from people that live in rural areas. That is to tell you the omission from the constitution of authorities and roles that the traditional rulers ought to have been playing has also contributed to these communal clashes as well as division amongst us.
Now, beyond constitutional role, looking at these institutions, they are still existing, even though without the constitutional recognition or responsibility attached. Talking about the security also, we have, a number of security, the architecture is there. From the divisional police offices and so on and so forth. We have all the other other security agencies also having their presence at the local level. But you still find out that, these days, some of this traditional institution or the traditional rulers or what have you, and then even the security agencies are an integral part of the problem because, on several occasions they've been found wanting also. Conniving with criminals, to perpetrate all of this that we're seeing today. But fundamentally, beyond the, systemic problem we're talking about, what role do you think, poverty is playing in this? Because looking at the indices, not just poverty, illiteracy, poverty, and so on. These are very, very critical factors. What role are they playing, in precipitating or in magnifying, this sort of crisis that we're talking about?
We really don't want to look at it in terms of poverty or illiteracy. We would rather view it in the prism of impunity by leaders.
Okay. Injustice, perhaps, maybe.
Injustice and impunity. I prefer that word, impunity.
Okay.
Because a situation where a local government councillor who did not have even a bicycle was voted into office, and in just 2 years, he's building houses in the state capital, and that is impunity. So the people he left in the village would certainly be aggrieved. So they would want to give it back. If they cannot get at him, they perhaps get at the community at large. You see, it started from the breakdown of family values. There has been a breakdown of family values. Parents cannot control their children.
So it's still coming back to the issue of poverty.
No, it's not about...
Because if you can take care of the home front,
no,
and you have...
It's not really about poverty.
Okay.
It's about clash of culture.
Okay.
I would rather define it that way. Clash of culture, because you find that some families are not really poor, but because their children have had half-baked education, perhaps, gone to secondary school, some even go to the university, but they are not employed. So when they come back to the village, you find that they cannot be controlled by that community again, because they have this feeling that they are more enlightened than the entire community. So it's about clash of cultures there, and our religious leaders are also to blame here. Particularly preachers, who are quick to consign individuals to the hellfire, but have not been preaching about the values of growing up, about the values of respect to parents, about the values of respect to one another. They are quick to consign one another to hellfire, and they have been the ones who have preached this issue of jihad. This ought not have been preached to our people. I think we have other things, other more important things to be preached than the issue of fight. So they brought it up. You find that some concepts were even built on that, on militarism.
But how does that, how does that re-engineer or, enhance or, contributed to the level of insecurity we're seeing? Because we're talking about, we're looking at the issues based on what we're seeing today, our contemporary security issues.
I think the most drastic security situation began in the Northeast with a sect calling for proclaiming jihad and recruiting people who were half educated in the Islamic religion. So it's all about religious teaching, wrong teaching over a long period. And you see, when you come down south, I mean all over the north, apart from the lack of meaningful role for the traditional rulers, we also have the emasculation of the local government system by governors. This time around, by governors of the states. So you find that if you go to most of the rural local government councils, you don't even find even a laborer. Most of them are in the state capital looking for funds.
The collapse of the rural economy, or the local economy as a result of absence of governance at that level. But then let's look at the issues specifically now. The issue of communal conflict has been with us, just like you said, for many years. The Tiv-Jukun, conflict, over land, over, and so on, has been there. Ethno-religious crisis, along, Plateau, along Kaduna, and so on, has also been there. So, but then trying to tie all of this, I was talking about the economic impact of it, because in most cases it also has economic dimension. That's why I brought about the issue of perhaps the poverty level and what have you. I don't know, how are you looking at the connectivity or the prevalence of some of these fault lines?
No, yes, I think we have to look at it, more fundamentally. In the past, the economy of Nigeria is pretty much rural-based, agricultural, because the cotton, the groundnuts that were produced that made Nigeria to be one of the producers of primary products in the world was come from the rural areas, because much of the cotton was grown in the rural areas. Most of the rural economy was based on agricultural produce. Even in the West, the cocoa farmers, and in the East, the palm oil farmers were all mostly rural-based. And there was a lot of money. It enhanced the rural economy because there was a linkage between what was the activity, the economic activity there, right through, the process, right through the metropolitan countries, where these products were processed. And then, of course, some of the, there was value added. And there's also the, some of the, metropolitan companies were there to help, to help stimulate the local economy, local production. So you find a lot of money at the rural areas. You have local, bourgeoisie, local businessmen. Money was running around there. A lot of produce merchants all over northern Nigeria. But suddenly, because of the globalization, it cut off. Globalization was, it cut off the rural economy, and there was no alternative. And then, of course, those produce merchants.
Much of globalization, because we are talking about, in a situation whereby you cannot compete, but you talk about the primary products,
Yes.
Just about value addition and our ability perhaps to sustain the local industries that would add value.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, why I say globalization is that then some people became better producers than ours. But for instance, Malaysia became better producers of palm oil than Nigeria. So effectively, the center shifted to Malaysia. The same thing with cocoa. Better producers came, and so the globalized world now looked at economies of scale. And then Nigeria, where a lot of the spending, a lot of the marketing boards were abrogated, you suddenly found some of the the local economy was receding, because if you wanted granules, for instance, you better go to Senegal. We had a lot of competition. Or if you wanted cotton, you better go to Turkey or Egypt. So that is part of the globalization. And then there was also better productive capacities in terms of techniques of production. So at the end of the day, our farmers, who were the ones in the chain of production, were just cut off. And then, of course, then we had, it coincided with the coming of the local government, reform of the local government system, where, much of the powers that was, exercised by the local authorities were now getting to the states,
move to the center.
To the states, and from there to the center. And so the people at the local level became alienated from a number of these things. And then, of course, some of them either chose to move to the cities where these things are happening, or went to the production areas in Nigeria like Lagos and the rest of them, and then of course leaving a hole here, and then of course the power, the economy, and all that, and then also oil boom also exacerbated that, because then it's no longer a matter of production at that level, but oil.
There is easy money
from oil.
So allocation, people are waiting for allocation instead of taking advantage of a comparative advantage of what they have, as in terms of potentials. And it's still talking about failure of governance, because it is only effective governance that would be able to exploit available resources for the benefit of the people. Now, coming back to looking at, the changing dynamics, before now, population upsurge, some would say, is also a contributory factor. Today, the communal conflicts around, this central states is largely has to do with land, for instance, and farmers and the herders, competing for land and so on. We're talking about, a rapidly growing population of over 200 million people. And then there's competition for space. How do you think, what impact do you think, that this is making, in the whole conflict that we're talking about?
Areas of talking about land dispute that I can say got aggravated by political abracadabra. Because before the advent of stability of democracy, we had where you get Fulanis going to states like Enugu, Ebonyi, Abia, Benue, and others, and doing their cattle rearing, as well as establishing what we call Ruga, with even some of the tribes that are there, their host communities like the Igbos and the Chiefs, as well as Idomas, as their main agents in the sale of the proceed of this cattle rearing, where we have Karas and even areas they call Zango. But the advent of democracy, where some politicians who lack selflessness, tolerance, patriotism, as well as belief in the fact that Nigeria has moved from a country to a nation where an Abdulkader can comfortably live in Ihiri, Anambra State, and transact any kind of business other than even cattle rearing with Nkechi, Ngozi, or Chukwuemeka without any fear of evil, as well as Chukwuemeka also going to Sabongari and doing other things. So I believe political division also created these problems, where some people in a bid to become governors or senators or House of Reps in those areas used sentiment to say, okay, you no longer need to allow these people rear cattle in your areas, which hitherto were not there. We know even a former late secretary to government of the Federation who was installed as the Gemoleutiv, the shelter of the thieves. Then you can remember Wazir in Jama'a, he was the Gemoleutiv, and presently the shelter of the thieves, the Gemoleutiv, is still a Fulani man, the former vice president, alleged Dr. Atiku Abubakar. So that is to tell you, political division are also responsible, other than land dispute and host of others, because most of these...
But it's still a factor, because you talked about, the movement of pastoralists from the north, southwest.
It's a factor engineered.
And then we're talking about disappearing, cattle routes and what have you.
It's a factor engineered by politicians and the selfish ones, because amongst them, we have the patriotic and good ones, but the percentage of the ones that teaches you how to say this one is this one is that, courtesy of the land, what have you, are the ones that, forms the percentage.
Okay, we'll be exploring more of that, the politicization of the whole issue and how, that is exacerbating the problem. Yes, politicization along virtually all the lines, beyond just the farmers' hardest conflict, even the secessionist agitations and so on, even the so-called banditry or terrorism or insurgency have their political dimensions. So we'll be looking at that when we return from the break. In case you're just joining us, the program is Daily Politics and is reaching you live from Trust TV here in Abuja. And I've been interfacing with Suleiman Abdulaziz, the spokesperson of the Coalition of Northern Group CNG, and Comrade Ilyas Gadu, a public affairs analyst, and Salud and Tati Mahmoud. Together we'll be looking at the issues very closely. When we return, we'll look at the contemporary issues, especially those that are being undermining the ability, for the country, to remain united, especially now that we're moving towards 2023 election, and what role politicians are playing, in exacerbating the tension. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
This is Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Thank you very much for staying with us. It's still Daily Politics, and it's coming to you live from Trust TV here in Abuja. And today we're looking at the return of communal conflicts, especially in northern part of the country, even though we have communal conflicts all around the country. But then we're looking at specific issues that are being compounding the security situation in this part of the country. And one of it is communal conflicts. We also talked about the presence of banditry, or terrorism now, and insurgency and what have you. But then before the break, we're looking at the role being played by politicians, in most cases, the politicization of the conflict. And some would say substantially the political class have their own fair share of the blame. Today, political agitations or interest are being canvassed using or advanced, using conflict and so on and so forth, like what we're going to witness, what we just witnessed, recently. There has been a lot of uprising, especially that has this that has connection with the separatist agitations, for instance, which has also been putting people on the edge. Now we're talking about traders being attacked, here and there, especially in the southern part of the country. And of course, some of the comments that have been made by politicians that are also, flaring up, the whole issue. How are you looking at the role or the political dimension, to this insecurity problem?
You mean the regional agitations and separatism
yes,
matters?
And the role they are playing, in exacerbating communal conflict or, ethnic rivalry or ethnic,
No, you see, I don't think they are playing any role. It is the ethnic rivalry that has given birth to the current situation. Okay. You see, what we have been evading is the simple truth that my fellow brother here said Nigeria has evolved from a country to a nation. While we believe Nigeria has never been a country in the first place, it's just beyond an imposed name and a fictitious geography. Is
it that bad? Because, looking at Nigeria has been in existence in the last...
That's what I told you, beyond a name. imposed on the people, and a fictitious geography. You see, really you cannot say you have a country when for 62 years a significant component of that country is insisting that it's not part of the country. It has even it led to bloodshed, to serious violence.
Is there a justification for that?
What justification? No justification. You see, the issue is we have never, throughout history, there had never been a time where we as a people agreed to coexist together. We were blended by the force of arms, by the colonial masters, and it's just like matrimony. Somebody coming from, a powerful person coming from Niger, carrying a wife from Maiduguri, bring her to Kano and say you must live as husband and wife.
Is it the most now? Because I think we have coexisting as a union, and of course all the components, except for
the union was imposed on us, which is why as soon as the Europeans left, as soon as they left, I think just 2 years after,
6 years after.
The Biafrans said they are not Nigerians. And even before the Europeans left, if we can remember, if we go back to history, we find that even our leaders, past leaders, when they talk about Nigeria, it's only when they were in Lagos for conferences. As soon as they finish those conferences, our northern leaders will come back to their north and they will speak about north. The south will speak about the south. And I think somebody told us, a lecturer told us that even the colonial masters have had that enmity. The administrator of the south was not very friendly to the administrator of northern Nigeria. So when the amalgamation came in, I think at the earliest opportunity, our premier Ahmadu Bello said it was a mistake of 1914. And I think Awolowo said just a geographical expression. The Igbos did not even stop at talking, they took up arms. So I don't think we have ever been a country.
Is that something that we can put on the table? Because yes, if we look at the scenario today, all of these components of the country that have been agitating for separation, for instance, still also believe in the Nigerian project, because in a way, you find people saying that we want to leave, but at the same time they're aspiring to, to be in the union. So how can we justify, how can we reconcile this?
I think we need to look at it historically. Many countries of the world today, including the superpowers, didn't start homogeneously. Some were put together by some others. Some evolved. For instance, Britain was put together by the French, the Normandy invasion. They put them together. For a very long time, Britain was a vassal of France. America was a hodgepodge of a lot of things. Russia was the same thing. France. France was actually the name of the Franconians, who are originally based in Germany. But you see, there's something about elite consensus. There's something about called elite, projection. And say, look, we have a state here. We have the beginnings of a state, and we want to make it a nation. So what do we need to do to make it a nation? Some went through constitutional arrangements, some went through war, some went through forcible, but along the line, there was an elite consensus. In the case of Nigeria, the elites have not been able to rise up to the challenges of nation building. Nation building is not a tea party. It's a very grueling, difficult process, but a process that has to go on. For instance, Britain, the journey to Britain does not even have a constitution. It started by 1215 Magna Carta. Till today, Britain is still evolving. They don't have a constitution, but they have a consensus about leadership.
Yeah, but if you're talking about consensus, some would say the Nigerian elites have a consensus. When it comes to...
It's about consensus.
Do you find them talking about, when it comes to sharing,
But that is not the consensus we're talking about.
And all of that, these are some people that can, easily share positions of responsibilities, political offices. They can easily share resources. But why is it difficult for them to have a consensus when it comes to nation building?
Because first of all, they are not rigorous. For you to be able to have a consensus on nation building, you have to be rigorous, you have to be patriotic, you have to be selfless. You have to have a sense of direction and say, look, this is where we are today. Look, America started with 13 states. And the vast majority of America that is today was not even part of the 13 states. But today, America has 50 states because the leaders at that time fashioned out a constitution, fashioned out a platform where for the next 100 years, this is what we're going to use as a template to create this nation. And that is what succeeding generations came and implemented from the days of Thomas Jefferson and George Washington till the day of Obama and this gentleman Biden. So it's a process, and what is guiding that is what is called enlightened self-interest. Our elites, their interests are along just greed and hedonism. They are not thinking about the 200 years from now. What Nigeria is going to be, what are the potentials, what are the opportunities that we can use to make this country? No, they're thinking about the next election and what I need to do to get to power and to be able to get my hands on this political economy. But they're not thinking about, look, tomorrow I want a Nigeria that can send somebody to the moon or can even expand its territory economically, politically, diplomatically within the West African sub-region and as a spur to Africa. They're thinking about just, this person is a Hausa man, so I want to, all those, this are micro.
But even that, in most cases, is advanced when there are political gains, to benefit from. And because, you don't had some of these issues coming up until, we're heading towards, for instance, elections and so on. You find people, compounding, conflicts or agitations, in order to have an advantage, in the political calculation and so on. But talking about, elite capture and, of course, ability also to get around it as citizens, for instance, because citizens have also a role to play. Beyond what the elites think, the citizens also should have a consensus. We are running a democracy, and a democracy is about the numbers. And there is a cycle, election. We have, election cycle where citizens can decide. So how do you think, the people can now, take over this sovereignty that we're talking about, and of course, change the narratives in terms of what the elites are imposing on us, these divisions along ethnic and religious lines for their own selfish interests?
Well, in the first place, when you go back history lane, the concept and idea of amalgamation was conceived by the then Ladibolu of Oyo dynasty, Obong of Calabar, Metrari, the emir of Kano, as well as Ekanemi and host of others. These were traditional rulers that saw that they could form common trade in 1902. So that is to tell you, as at that time, they had foresight and they had some kind of trade relations that they feel must come together. So that is to tell you, the Nigerian project itself was not a project conceived in error. From 1902 till 1914 amalgamation until date, you can see that to some extent we've been able to bridge some gap. And coming to
why is it difficult for us to have a citizens' consensus?
The political factor, like my eminent colleagues here analyzed, the elites knows the sweetness of power. The elites knows how to pilfer with public funds. The elites knows the sweetness of first class. The elites knows the sweetness of taking their children, their families and wards to first grade universities. And the elites also knows what to do.
But how do we change this narrative? That is
for the followership to embrace integrity, to embrace ideology, to also come back to the drawing board by believing in people, not by their wealth, their status or the positions they hold, but conduct, integrity, as well as patriotism. Today, it is lacking in our polity. Even take the political party machineries, the vying for chairmanship of the various parties. If you come and you have never been this and that, even the common person that serves you in the home, the kind of utterances and what have you they say can even discourage you. So it is when we come back to know that being citizens is not by mistake. We must also take our roles as followership that follow people not via their ill-gotten word, but via their conduct and what contribution they have made to nation building via educational empowerment and also of others.
Right, Suleiman, we are rounding up now, and then looking at what we are heading for, 2023 elections, for instance, and of course, some of this, sad stories or sad commentaries about ethnic, disharmony or ethnic, lack of, unity among Nigerians now. People are being killed and maimed because of their ethnic background and so on and so forth, despite the fact that, Nigerians have the right to live anywhere, and do their legitimate businesses and so on. How do you see, what do you think we need to do, going forward? Some say there is need for a national conversation to look at all of these issues. You talked about the lack of belief in the Nigerian project in the first place. What do we do as a nation, to get out of this doldrum?
You see, really, I don't think there is a way out unless we have a country.
You see, we don't have a country.
We really, I'm telling you this. You see, if okay, now you are saying we should come together. When people are talking about a southern president or a northern president or even a tribal president, some people are even calling for Igbo presidency, not even a southeastern president. So you can see it's quite difficult for us to agree. My brother here has mentioned, has cited examples of other countries that have come along this, but at a point in time, they have agreed to live together.
Yeah, he talked about
we have never had that opportunity. You see, even the laws we operate were either given to us by the colonial masters or were imposed on us by the military. We have never had the opportunity of sitting down to give ourselves a law.
So, but why are we finding it difficult, to come together and discuss this issue?
That is because we have never agreed to live together. Which is why we are proposing a referendum, not these conferences. We have had so many conferences, and we have reports rusting in dusty conclaves of offices. What we want now, what we should work for, is a general referendum where people will agree that they want to live together. That is primary. Then we can even question the name. I think other places have adopted other, like Burkina Faso has changed its name to a native name. Ghana has, but when you see, you cannot tell me that a person really believes in a country if he would single-handedly steal 40 billion naira from that country. I don't think he really has faith in that country.
No, let's get to your last line. Yeah.
My last line is that it all boils down to the leadership and the elite. Countries do not become countries or do not become nations just by accident. They come by conscious act of the leadership. The leadership decides, look, for good or bad, these are the ethos we are going to pursue. And we are going to, first of all, start with ourselves. We are going to, produce this ethos and compel ourselves to say, look, we are going to follow this ethos. And then by virtue of that, also carry the people along. That is what I'm talking about. That is the beginning of elite consensus. Like, for instance, America will say, look, we came here from Europe. We were the dregs of Europe. We were rejected. So we are come here. We are going to make our lives here. We don't want the European way of life. We want to be a Republican country. We don't want kings. We don't want queens.
So there is need to domesticate.
So, yes, and of course, in Nigeria, our elites are busy going after mundane things. They are not busy looking at how to build a country with inclusion For instance, somebody will become, I was just talking, somebody who was a minister several years ago, he became a governor, 8 years, he now became a senator, now he wants to become a chairman of a law. How does that help the process of nation building, for God's sake?
Right. Okay, thank you very much. I think it's about time we draw the curtain on this discussion. In case you're just joining us, the program is Daily Politics, and we'll be looking at the return of communal conflicts and, of course, other sundry security challenges that have been plaguing especially the northern part of the country. The consensus here is that there is need for the elites, to change, their mentality towards nation building. They have to have a consensus that would, help, develop and make a prosperous country. Again, there is need to return governance to the grassroots, and of course ensure that there's that would help, the nation to regain its stability and of course prosperity. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for talking to us on Daily Politics. So on their behalf and the technical crew, my name is Shafiu Suleiman. Do have yourself a wonderful time ahead.
This is Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Kana jina? Na'am? Ya ne ma muka jiya ne?